Hey, everybody, this is Michael Goldberg, and welcome to the LinkedIn Live Lunch Hour. We are talking to Lori Knudson out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Good morning, Lori. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure, it's nice to have you here on a beautiful Friday here in Dallas. You said that it was overcast in Charlotte
Yes,
tonight.
yes, we've had some tropical storm coming through, but it's not raining right now. It's just overcast, so I'll take that.
I guess of tropical storms, there's already been two this early, and it isn't officially hurricane season until
Yeah,
Monday. I guess it's going to be a busy summer, and I've got family in where I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. So I'm sure it's going to be an interesting summer. So we'll see.
yes.
So Lori, you are a certified YouMap coach. So you got to tell everybody, what is YouMap? What do you do? Walk us through your background a little bit.
Okay. Well, UMAP is a holistic approach to, well, it was originally designed for career search, but it's really found a home in many different areas from fitness coaches to health and wellness. But it's a deep dive into you. And Kristen Sherry, who created the program and wrote the book UMAP, took the pieces that she found from her experience and with coaching that were missing often in some of the other assessments, and really pulled those together to create the UMAP process. And so it's based on 4 pillars of career satisfaction, or I call it life satisfaction, because it's really about self-awareness, and it's a little bit different than just a straight personality test or aptitude test, because you're getting a whole picture versus just one aspect. And not that there's anything wrong with those other tools, but this is a framework that is very comprehensive, and it's just one of those where everybody I know, including myself, but I've never coached someone that didn't go, wow. It's just like that aha moment. You're like, gosh, yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. So, but before you became a coach,
hmm
tell everybody what you did and what made you kind of transition into the coaching realm.
Sure. I came from a background in sales. I was in pharmaceutical and healthcare sales for 20 years. And during that time, I really discovered my love of training. I was fortunate to be able to hold roles as a district trainer, regional, and then even national. And I remember conducting my first national training for another sales force, and after that I was hooked. I mean, it's just a great feeling. And
Mm.
after going through the industry and things changing and looking at really what I enjoyed, and then once I actually became a client of Kristen's, myself going through the process, it really became clear. I never considered myself to be someone who was an entrepreneur. I'm a reluctant entrepreneur. I'm not a risk taker. So it's just kind of the method of the way that I get to do what I love to do. And that's really working with people, helping people, and training. So I do training and facilitation as well as working one-on-one.
So when you look at and there's different assessments out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I think that people take. There's obviously Clifton Strengths, which is the Strength Finders, and we have a special guest. I think you're going to like this special guest. May I bring this person on?
Yes.
You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. So there she is.
Hello.
I'm not
The
going to
founder.
hijack your podcast. I'm
Oh,
just here to say
no.
hello.
No,
I invited her. I
totally
invited her
cannot.
on.
Yes, no, this is awesome. Oh.
So
I don't want
this
to
is
steal Lori's thunder.
No,
oh,
no, my thunder is yours, and it's outside as well by the sound of it now.
Yeah,
nice.
it's been raining here. I just want to say that Lori will never tell you how awesome she is, but she goes so above and beyond for her clients. It's unbelievable. So Lori and I are close. We live about 15 minutes apart. She lives in Ballantyne. I live in Wesley Chapel. So we're not far from each other. And so I chat with Lori about things that she does to help the people she works with. And I'm always amazed at what a servant heart she has. She'll never tell anyone that, but
Shh.
she is, don't create more work for me.
That's funny. That
Yeah,
is too
Lori
funny.
is good people. Like what you see on the platform is what you get in real life. I had mentioned in passing that my husband was having surgery during this whole pandemic, and she remembered the day of the surgery and reached out and offered to babysit my kids so they didn't have to be in a public waiting room at a doctor's office.
No
She's
kidding.
good people.
She is good people.
I
And,
mean,
and
yeah,
go
I mean,
ahead.
I was like, your kids are adorable. You know, they kept saying, Catherine kept saying, you're, you know, looking at my daughter's Barbies that had been like dusty and stuff. She's like, this place is amazing.
Wow. There it is. It's been
Yeah.
laid out. Somebody needs to clean up.
Did Lori
Yeah.
tell you she was in the first 8 YouMap coaches in the world?
She hasn't bragged about it yet. I got to get her bragging, don't I?
Yeah.
That's some snaps right there. First
Yeah.
8.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
we're now like we just entered in Belgium, the UK.
Oh, wow.
I know, the UK, the Middle East, Canada, and the US. And so it's gone global now, and she was in the first 8 people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so did you have those books published in those native languages as well?
Oh,
In the
it's
worksheet?
interesting because the first language so YouMap has been translated into Arabic, the profile, not the book, but the first language will actually be Vietnamese, interestingly, for the book.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
But the goal is to have the languages, native
Well,
languages. But most people can speak English these days.
yeah, well, so how it works is people can approach the publisher and ask to purchase the foreign rights. So if you're in a country that has a predominant language outside of English and people prefer their native language, which they would anyway, but prefer it, you can approach the publisher and ask them to have a 5 to 7 year deal usually, and then they can have exclusive rights in that country and then publish it in their language. So yeah, that's how that works.
That's awesome. That's
Mhm.
awesome. So, and so for those of you who don't know Kristen Sherry, she is the founder and creator of YouMap. And so, and I'm going to have you on a show and we'll talk more in detail about you, but I just thought I'd pop you on, say hello to
Awesome. I
everybody
am
here.
going to pop out because I want Lori to have her time. I don't
Absolutely.
want to
No, we
We're not
monopolize
going to
it.
hijack it. We'll tag
No,
team.
but I thought Lori would appreciate bringing on the friend and confidant that you are, Kristen, and so that's why I brought you on.
Yeah,
So thanks
Lori's
for doing
awesome.
it.
If you're not following Lori, you really should because she's a real giver.
Absolutely,
Thank
she
you.
is. She's great.
Take
All right,
care,
Kristen.
everyone.
Have a
Happy
good
Friday.
weekend. Yeah, you too.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. How about that? You like that?
Well,
See?
yeah, it's like my head might not fit in the frame anymore. So,
And that's the first time I've done that, where I brought in like a surprise guest, and I pinged her and I go, "Hey, I'm interested in talking to you about becoming certified myself, and can we talk next week?" I go, "Oh, by the way, I'm talking to Lori. Would you like to pop on?" And she goes, "Yeah, sure." So I said, "Pop on around 11:30," and she popped on right away. So it's all right. We're good. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah,
She's
she's great, and yeah, we've been trying to get together for just to tailgate and the driveway or something, and our weather this week has not cooperated. Yes, we're missing our get-togethers. So
well, there you go. That's it. So let's talk about YouMap and what that is. What's the journey like for someone that signs up and says, really, like who's the best candidate for becoming a YouMap client of yours?
It really depends on your expectations and goals, because there are a lot of different people that are appropriate candidates. I mean, job seekers are obvious because it's really going to give you that self-awareness and confidence and intel that you need to really gain that self-awareness and deep dive into what you do well and to be able to articulate it. But it's I've worked with some entrepreneurs that wanted to really understand their areas of strength and blind spots. So it can be a personal development tool as well as professional development. I think job seekers, people in transition, even students for career pathing, because the one thing that it does is it doesn't like say, okay, this is what you have to be. It really gives you like these options and really a career path. And then from there, you can determine, like how much education or training or what you might already have. How can I make this work? So that's what I like about it, is it really takes you where you are and builds on it and just makes you better. So there's many different facets of how it can be used.
Yeah, I know that I used it with our friend Lila Smith here in Dallas, and went through it because I was trying to figure out, and I had done Clifton Strengths, I had done a couple other assessments as well, just trying to figure out, all right, how do I help myself get better at the areas, right? So you take an inventory of yourself, and I do this with my job seeking clients or job seeking clients. It's, you take an inventory of your skills. You say, here's what I'm good at. Here's what I'd like to get better at. But really, I think depending upon your age and where you're at in your career, you may want to continue to focus mainly on your strongest points. But some people, it just fascinates me when I ask them, so what makes you unique? As we're working on the 30-second elevator pitch, right?
Yeah.
And they can't tell me, and they have a really difficult time. Why is that? I mean, it's Why are people trying to have a hard time and answer that first?
We're too close to it. I mean, and that's the thing. Like I struggle with this myself. I mean, as Kristen says, and I think it's her tagline, it's hard to read the label when you're inside the jar. And so I have coaches for me, because I'm like, why is this so hard? And it's one of those things where we're so close to it. Our natural strengths, we tend to discount. We don't think they're special. So becoming aware of what you do. And yes, I'm a big believer in focusing on your strengths, because a weakness, there's some things that we should improve. Like I've improved my tech. Am I a techie? No. But I mean, a year ago, could I, use an iPhone, make a video, do half the stuff I've done? No. I mean, I've had to take it upon myself to learn those things, but that doesn't make me a social media expert. And so I think, there's some things that you have to work on learning and doing, but when you focus on a strength and where you're good naturally and where you really can excel, that's a sweet spot. Focusing on a weakness, you can improve it, but you're still going to be average at best. You're never going to be great. It's just not within you. And no matter how much you practice or work on it. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to improve some of those things, but
be cognizant.
Putting all your energy there is not the best use of time. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of strengths, and YouMap uses the Clifton strengths as a component. I mean, it's part, the strengths part. I mean, why reinvent the wheel? And it's not just from the aspect of having the language to articulate it. That's really important. And from what you do, Michael, helping your candidates, I mean, you want to be able to articulate that in an interview. I mean, when I went through it the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, if I had said this would have sounded so much better than, well, I don't know. I just do it that way. Yeah, I mean, that's the way I always do it. Well, okay, yeah, that really sold me. Having that language is really important. understanding not just what you do well, but also the blind spots. And, you know, we can overuse our strengths. We can have barriers or the way they can be perceived. Once you know those, you can know how people might react to those and be aware of that. And so it's really about that self-awareness, but knowing how you do something well and being able to speak to it really brings that to life. But the magic, and I think I already used that word, so I'm overusing it, but the magic is really
The power.
not the power. Yes, I know. I'm just like in this magical spot today. The power is not just being able to speak about it, but you really want to find that role that lets you use your strengths, your top strengths, because people that work within their top strengths are up to 6 times more engaged than those who do not use their strengths daily. So that's where you want to be. So yes, it's going to help you during the interview, but you really want to, you know, yeah, Kristen's like hard to read the label when you're stuck inside the jar. Yeah. So that's what you're striving for, you know?
Yeah. And so the big question that I like to ask my clients, and even just when I'm talking with, you know, if I'm doing any kind of search or something, I always ask them, I say, what's your superpower? So I'm going to ask everyone that's on the live feed here to tell us what your superpower is. Share with the world what it is. And even we had a gentleman by the name of Hemant Bardakar, who said, it's really related to superpower. It's amazing. So I would agree with him and told him I did. So Lara Pearson, who is an experienced talent acquisition professional, says, you know, we don't take a periodic inventory. You should document whenever you update your skills. Yes, you should always update your skill sets. And if you're looking for a job, take the assessments. She's recommending to take the assessments on Indeed or LinkedIn. And she said, as an English minor, I constantly work on my language and self-description. And that's great, Laura. I think you should totally be doing that. I know LinkedIn also has courses, but I think this is, I think YouMap, Clifton Strengths, it really hones in on those specific skills where the Indeed and the LinkedIn inventories are more about improving skills for the workplace. The YouMap and the Clifton Strengths is really about self-discovery of you. So, right. So as an English minor, she's always working on how she says things and how she describes things. And of course, as my wife was an English major. And so, you know, if I use the improper placement of the word I and me, we get the hand. So
now I'm paranoid.
Don't worry, I'll correct you. We all do it to each other now in the house. It's pretty fun.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good observation about the inward and inner reflection and versus skills. But I think knowing your strengths helps you identify, and it makes those skills make sense. Like if you are high in communication and you're speaking and presence, that you know, if you have influencing skills, or if you're more inward thinking, then you're, you know, might prefer those roles and skills that are going to be more I don't want to say isolated, but just more mental based activities versus people facing activities. And so it's important to really understand what you like and be honest and own it, because if you don't really, it's not that you hate people, but some people prefer to do mental work. They are, give them a spreadsheet, data analysis, they're in their happy place. So it's really about knowing what you enjoy and thinking about the task. And this is something I would encourage everyone to do, is to think about every role that you've had. And, you know, like we've all had bad ones, but think about the things that you enjoyed in that role. And what were you doing? Who were you working with? Were you working with people? Were you working by yourself? and look at those things, because we don't think about the day-to-day tasks that we do. We get good at a skill, and whether we enjoy it or not, we fall into this cycle of applying for roles where we keep doing these skills that we may not actually enjoy, but we're good at them. And when we're told, if you're good at it, you should, that's what you should do. And that's another component of YouMap, is really taking a deep dive into that.
Yeah. So, there's, you talk about focusing on strengths, and I know as a former recruiting leader, that's what I would do. I wouldn't focus on the stuff. Now, did I try to coach them and get them to kind of consider that on the next time something came around? Absolutely. And then this book by Marcus Buckingham, or was it Marcus Buckingham, on the focus on strengths?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that one of his books?
I'm trying to think.
There was a book called, or Now Your Strengths, I think is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it was it was the continuation of the Gallup series,
Mm-hmm.
which, by the way, Strength Finders is a part of the Gallup series, which leads to the Clifton Strengths, right? I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically, as you were telling your story, I was thinking, candidates, especially in the clients that I have, and I'm sure the clients that you have, hey, we have barking dog matching going on.
That's right. I'm just going to have a duet.
Okay, but basically, I say, all right, one of the exercises that we go through is, let's walk through your accomplishments. And, we use the STAR methodology. So talk about the situation, the task, the actions you took, and the results you took. And so far they're doing great. Some you have to finagle, and they have these long-winded, but the point is that I'm trying to get them to have these stories in their head, so that when they look at this, number one, they've already created a history book of themselves and their results. And number two, they can then bring those stories to the forefront during an interview when the manager or the recruiter goes, tell me about a time, ...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So I agree with you. I love that.
Yeah, I encourage, I have my clients, if I'm coaching them and interviewing, to type them out. Your behavioral interview questions are going to fall into 4 or 5 buckets, and they could be asked slightly differently, but you can type them out, and you can say, okay, if they ask about working with people, or a time I had a difficult time with a manager, coworker, whatever, plug in the scenario, or, an accomplishment, or when something didn't go well. It's a plug and play process. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't come naturally at first, but yeah, like you, I like them to first come up with the scenarios. I was the worst of just having this long, it was like, okay, cut, because we got to get to the point. And so that's where, when you write that out, like STAR or PAR, where you just, problem, action, result, however you want to do it, when you get them to say, just answer these questions. Don't worry about how it sounds. Answer these questions. Then we can wordsmith it and make it into so it flows naturally. And it's something that you do have to practice, but it's, a lot of people are saying, well, it's rehearsed. It is, but it's still your story. It's just that the more that you say it, when you get in that situation where you're normally nervous anyways, you want to do well, it's not the first time you want to say it. You want to have went through it before, because otherwise it's going to be like, yeah, nothing's going to come out, and it's going to sound incoherent. Yeah. Did I freeze up?
Yeah, I don't know if it's me or you, but one of us is
there's really bad storms going on here right now, just as we went live. So I was like, yes. So yeah, I bring the thunder,
I think it's appropriate.
I know. I'm like, make it rain. That's what I'm doing. So
yeah, so it's interesting. So Laura again said, and I like this, I always like to role play the interview. If my candidate is unsure or wants coaching, we discuss the main questions and elevator pitches. It helps every time. So yeah, that's what, that's, I'm sure, a part of the services through YouMap. It's a part of my services as well. Um, what I do is I get them to send me the job profile, whether it's vague or maybe it's the job description, because recruiters don't know what they're doing when it comes to writing job descriptions. But I have them send me the specs, and I basically create a good hour-long interview. And one of our calls is total interview prep, and I coach them on how to interview the questions. I'm recording them so they can see them. And I just think that's super important for candidates to see themselves on camera, as uncomfortable as it may be. That's why I think the purpose of a YouMap is so important, because so I'll tell you, the prioritizing and the identifying of the values. I checked. I checked the top 10 values, and then I actually ended up force ranking them. But I love the transferable skills exercise that I went through, because when you look at it, you actually see that you have quite a few transferable skills. So how do you coach your clients when they're wanting to go from, let's say, a recruiting professional to a sales professional, or find something that you can talk to if you want to pick another example?
Well, I mean, Korn Ferry, which is, a recruiting organization and research, they did a study and said 85% of skills are transferable. And so you really just want to take them to the basic level. When you think about it, remove the industry jargon. Did you manage people or a process? Did you manage a budget? I mean, even an individual contributor as a sales rep, you probably had a budget. You probably had, process, or you've had KPIs. I mean, you just want to think of and list out, think of everything you've done in those very basic terms, so that if you're transitioning from finance or from teaching to finance, or whatever it is, or from recruiting to sales, you want to bring that coaching aspect, the training aspect, the communication, all of these things, asking good questions, being able to, research. Those are all things that are involved in a sales process, because a sales process, it can vary by culturally, how you might start the conversation, but the process is the same regardless of where you are. I mean, there's leads, there's prospecting, there's, clarification and objections and all of that. So when you boil it down and take it to the basics, is what you need to do when you're looking at transferring your skills, and then also assessing where you are. Do you need to take a course? Do you need a certification that maybe will help you, rise to the top? But networking is really going to be your friend in any job. And I learned the hard way. I was the poster child for what not to do. So I coach people now to not be a Lori, because I was the deer in headlights working for a company for almost 17 years. And, I had this glowing track record, and I'm like, hey, everybody's just going to want to hire me. But, they don't know me. Yeah, crickets. I mean, it's like they don't know me outside of my industry or outside of my company. And so it's humbling. But yeah, you really do need to be able to know and understand those things. And I think when you were going back to something you said earlier, and I can table this if you want to say something, but you were talking about what makes you unique. And that's another part of the YouMap is, the first pillar is strengths. And then the second is values. Values is overlooked in 99% of cases. I never thought about my values in a job search. I mean,
so important.
You can think about it from, I always use the extreme example because, it's easy to identify. If somebody is against ethical like unethical treatment of
Right.
animals or whatever. They're not going to work for a meat packing plant or, do something like that. But we don't really think about the other things like, okay, I really value autonomy. I really value risk and challenge. I want, and if you're in a role where it's just repetitive process, but you thrive on being challenged and having growth opportunities and you're not having any, I mean, that's a value. So you really have to like take inventory personally and professionally of what's important, because you can have everything else aligned, but if your values aren't, it's never going to be a good fit.
It's funny that you say that. So on the workbook that I give to my job seeking clients, the first question is, the tab is called Start With You. And the first question, I kid you not, and no knowledge, or I had done YouMap, didn't connect. In fact, I had done that before I did the YouMap in February with Lila. The first question, what are your values and why are they important to you? It's the first question to ask them, because you're absolutely correct. You got to look at your values, and then you have to look at the values. You can call them mission statements are kind of a bunch of BS, but you look at the values and you look at the culture of the organization. It was interesting. I was talking to a client this morning before a show, and he says, so how do you know when you are interviewing with an organization that they're walking the talk, right? They're practicing with whatever cliche you want to throw in there. I want your answer before I want to get
oh, come on.
Tell you what I told them. No, you're the star, not me. You're the star.
No, I mean, you're better. You have more background in the interviewing. I think you really have to do your homework, and there's questions that you can ask, but I think you need to speak with people within the company that work there. You need to listen to what people say and sometimes don't say. So people, if they love it, I mean, they're going to say, oh my gosh, I love working here. It's great. Or some people will say, yeah, it's a great company with great benefits, blah, blah, blah. Some it might be manager dependent. Others might be, yeah, it's great. You're going to work really hard, but we have fun. It's like, okay, so am I going to be working 24/7? What's the line here? And that's another thing that you have to be honest with yourself. I mean, I had opportunities for jobs before I moved over to training and coaching, and when I was still thinking about staying in sales, but it involved covering several states, and it was a really enticing job. I was excited about it, but I had to be honest. It just wasn't a good fit for where I am right now with my family, my husband's career. So you have to really think about, okay, going into it, what's important. I mean, I pulled out of one interview, honestly, when I was working with the recruiter, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because the worst thing you want to do is, I've heard people say, well, I'll just go and see what they say. If you know you're not going to accept that job, do not do that, because you burn the recruiter, you burn that company, you burn the bridge. I mean, they're going to be mad.
It's a waste of that candidate's time too.
Yeah.
Never turn down an opportunity. I'm like, no, are you interested?
Yeah. Well, I had one that originally started out, it was just covering the state where I live in North Carolina, which the core of the business was between two cities. And I was like, this is doable. I can drive that a day. I'm used to driving. And then it was then it became two, and then they kind of wanted part of the other. And then there was more overnights, and then it became 3 nights a week and I just told the person, I said, I really am excited about this role. I think it's great, from everything I can see. But I said, I'm going to withdraw from interviewing. They're like, no, why? They're like, you're a great candidate. I'm not saying that. I mean, this is just the feedback. I'm not tooting my horn or anything. But they were like, well, why do you want to do that? And I said, because I mean, I know I'm not going to take the role. So, I'm doing you a favor.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand from his point was, I don't want to start over. I already got this candidate that I put forward for the company, and now I'm pulling out. And I'm like, well it's
the
changed.
That's the way the ball bounces in the agency.
Yeah.
You need to understand that. Recruiters need to understand that. And people have heard me talk about this, that sometimes recruiters, no matter whether they're corporate recruiters or agency recruiters, look at you as a transaction. Your money to them, right? Corporate side, there's no money going into their pockets, but for the agency recruiters, there's money going into their pockets. And so one of the things that basically everyone, unless they have a position for you, there's nothing else they can do for you. And I think that's where people go, I don't understand why nobody calls me back, or what are some good recruiters I should get in touch with in these industries? I'm like, you can get in touch with them, but the chances of them responding back to you are about that much, because unless they have a position for you, why bother? Right? So, but back to the original question. So I basically told my client, I said, look, you need to go to a couple of places. You need to go to look on Glassdoor, look on Indeed, take the negative comments at face value, check to see if companies are responding to both positive and negative comments on those two platforms, because that'll tell you whether or not they are, they're in tune with what their current or ex-employees are saying. Like you suggested, to find connections in the company and just ask the hiring manager, hey, may I find a few people or talk with people on your team to understand more about, what their experience has been with company Y or company Z. And most of the time you wait until pretty much after you've had kind of like between your second interview and your final interview or whatever it is in the process. You don't want to do that up front, though I don't think there's any downfall to doing that. But you tell them, hey, I want to see it, practice what you preach. You want to look on their LinkedIn post, see what the company's posting, to see if they say, we are, socially responsible and we are servant leaders in our community. We do habitat, blah, blah, blah. You want to see posts on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or TikTok now, of the company participating in those events, right? Practice what you preach is what I said. And so the answer I gave him was very similar to yours.
No, Glassdoor is a great. I mean, I drew a blank on that one, but that I definitely go there. And you're right. You want to see the company replying, or acknowledging comments. Some just kind of go crickets, and that means the company's not monitoring. They're just kind of, they don't care. They're off in their own little world.
Right. And so, Laura Pearson again says, I think all interviews are beneficial for the candidate, but if you put someone in front of the manager who won't accept the offer, you risk burning a hiring manager bridge. Well, you also risk burning the company bridge too. If something popped up that maybe you were more closely aligned to, or they thought you were a great candidate, but if you burn that bridge, the chances of them calling you back are slim to none. Yes and no, Laura. I think, and Lori, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I don't think all interviews are beneficial if it's not the industry you want to be working in, or it's not at that level of position. So I remember back in the recession, the Great Recession, I'd have former CFOs or former controllers applying to, an accounting analyst position or business analyst position, taking cuts of 50 to 100,000. So to me, no, you're a recruiter. Good recruiters are going to say, all right, I don't know if because I asked, I'd have some calls with these folks to go, are you sure you really want to take that risk? I said, I have a hard time doing it because when the market turns around, how do I know you're going to be there? A month or 6 months after the market, you start seeing a bounce back in the economy. What's your thoughts on that? on her response?
That's, I mean, it's a tough call. I mean, to her response, I think things sometimes happen in the interview process, like maybe you're interviewing with another company at the same time. And as an interview person, yeah, let me like read this. We won't accept the offer. I mean, I think there's a couple points here. If they know going in they're not going to accept it, then yeah, you need to pull out. You need to just say, I'm not moving forward. This isn't for me, because that's a bad move. If you're on the fence and you're waiting to see what they offer, I mean, hopefully the conversation, they know the range. I always prefer a range. I hate when they make you specify. And of course they'll say, like, where you have to pick an exact number. I mean, a range allows for negotiation, or if they know kind of like, hey, this is where I want to be, but then they come back really on the low end and there's no negotiation. And I think you have to do your homework too. You have to look at what the market bears right now and do your research and say, for jobs in this area, this is the salary, this is fair. I mean, you can't just say, I want to make this, and there's no justification. I think that's fair. Now, if they come back and they're just thinking, oh, well, because the market's so bad, especially now, like, oh, they're just going to take it. And honestly, I've seen that happen in sales. It's like, well, if you don't want it, we'll just hire someone else. That's their attitude. And so, but as far as like the qualified and overqualified, that's a tough call, because I've been in that position where people didn't want to hire me because they're like, well, we're afraid you're going to be bored. And there was a point, especially like towards the end, where I didn't really want, all the drama. I didn't want all this other stuff. I'm like, no, I am okay. This is a great role for me. It fits every other box for me. If you give me the opportunity, I'm not going to jump ship. But I know people that do. So it's a tough call. And right now the market's flooded with people that are going to be in that same scenario. So I think that it's really how you position it. I mean, sometimes maybe you can negotiate and say, look, I mean, yeah, I was in this role and I would like to make this, but I also know, like, hey, I've got to feed my family. I need to do this. I'm good at these skills and I bring this value to you. How about after 6 months or a year, if things have turned around, that we can revisit or possibly bump up my salary? At that point, then you've proven yourself, you've proven your worth. Hopefully, if you haven't, then, that's a whole nother issue. Then you can maybe have that conversation. But, most people don't want to just job hop. And I think especially as you get older, you're really looking to build up that equity and not get lazy, but find a place where you can, because it takes time. I mean, and it's time for the employer and onboarding. It's hard just starting over constantly. I mean, I worked contract sales for a couple of years, and I mean, I discovered I'm like a phenom at onboarding, because I mean, you just like, you're like, get up to speed, learn this, switch over to this company's stuff and do that. But it's not what you really want to do long term. So I think people, so I don't know. That was a long-winded answer. I'm not sure.
Yes. But no, it was a perfect answer. And what I would also say is, I think it's up to recruiters after each conversation with their candidate to go, all right, you've spoken with me, are you ready to move forward? Now you've had the hiring manager interview, just the first one, before even knowing whether the status to go forward or not is there.
Mm-hmm.
to have a good recruiter is going to call and close and again continue to close the candidate at each part of the hiring stage. That's what a great recruiter does. And so if you go one interview and the person decides it's probably not for me, either for whatever reason, I'd rather know early on in that process. But the key point here is to recruiters who are watching, close them after each interview conversation that takes place to make sure that they're still interested, or do a check-in. I don't know if it's closing, but it's checking in with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So my friend Danja Gale here, let's see. She said something here, and I liked what she said. And you should connect with her, Lori. She's great.
Okay.
Good people info in decision making and choosing not to proceed. We have a choice. Yes, you do. Being intentional and clear from the beginning is absolutely essential. And working with someone like you, meaning I guess us, one of us, because in securing the right position transformation. And then I kind of commented back and I said, yes, hiring transformation, like hiring transformed, name of my. So anyways, there's a play on joke. Anyway.
That's a good observation. It's a 100%.
Absolutely. So we are coming up on time here. So how can people get in touch with you, Lori? I put LinkedIn, but are there other ways?
LinkedIn, I'm active on LinkedIn, so that is the best place. Send me a connection request, say, hey, I saw you, on Michael's show. And if they want to send me an email, they can reach out to me at Lori, Lori, at Nobility Consulting, and Nobility is spelled KNOWBILITY consulting.com. And I offer free consultations if anybody wants to talk, or I can send out sample reports or anything. But I do offer, really calls just to see where people are at and what's frustrating them, because sometimes too, they may need a different type of coach. So, I want to make sure it's a good fit for both of us.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm sorry. I want to type this in the ticker one more time before. So it's Lori at Nobility.com.
Yeah, Nobility, KNOW, like no, and then Bility, BILITY, consulting.com. Or they can even just go to nobilityconsulting.com, and there's a contact form if that's easier.
No doubt. So let's see. Oops. There you go. Look at that.
But if they're watching on LinkedIn, I am on, you said this was on Facebook too. On Facebook, I do have it, a page, or I'm under, so they can send me a request there too, but LinkedIn or email is probably the best.
Well, I can't say how wonderful it was to share your experience and qualifications and your stories on the LinkedIn Live Lunch Hour. And I appreciate you letting me bring Kristen on just to say hey.
No, it's always great. She's my friend, so it's great.
Absolutely. So, again, please reach out to Lori, and it's pronounced Knudson. When you first came on behind the scenes, I go Knudson. I didn't know if it was Knudson.
Different ways, honestly. There's it depending on the family and where you're from. So
right. So, are you from North Carolina or?
Originally, I'm from Michigan, but my husband's grandfather is from Norway. Came over from Norway to New York, so that's the Knudson connection. So.
Yeah, hey, that's a hashtag.
Yeah, the Knudson connection. There you go.
Boom. I love it. So I'm going to end the broadcast. I'll ask you to stay on for a quick minute after we hit the end broadcast. Thanks, everybody, for joining the broadcast today, or at least watching it on the replay. You can get in touch with me at michael@hiringtransform.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at superrecruiter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, but I am not on TikTok yet. I might be a little too old for the TikTok, but it's okay. It's okay. And I want to give a shout out to a very good friend of mine, Brent McCombs, who just landed a VP role with a
Awesome.
healthcare organization. And so I'm super excited for him. And so everybody send him well wishes here. I want you to stay safe. I want you to stay home and practice social distancing and enjoy the weekend. Thanks for participating. We'll see you on Tuesday for our next LinkedIn Live lunch hour.